Hello and welcome to Coffee with Candice. I'm your host, Candice Mama. I am geeking out about my next guest. His name is Andrew Gabelic, and he's the founder and creator of the world's leading numerology app, Teledipity. Andrew and I are going to discuss everything from spirituality to love to new age, and I think it's going to be a pretty fantastic conversation. As usual, if you like this podcast, please like, share, subscribe. And without further ado, here's Andrew. Andrew.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy we both got the yellow memo today. Oh man, I've been so excited to meet you.
Likewise.
Oh man, because I think you had me at hello when I downloaded Teledipity. Because
Uh-huh.
of these words right here, it said, Candice is here to counsel millions in humanitarian cause through visionary leadership. And I was like, yes, Candice is.
Pretty accurate description of your work.
No, I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. But before we get to Teledipity, which I really want to speak about, I want to speak a little bit about you because I watched your TED Talk.
Uh-huh.
And I remember it was just such a refreshing talk that I was like, oh my God, this guy is the coolest. And I think for me, it was because you were so vulnerable. You just came out there, you were funny, you were quirky, and you were just yourself. And so when you were preparing for that talk, like, what were you going for?
Uh, I I've done 3 TEDx talks. And in the very first one, I was coached by just the most beautiful soul I've ever met, who a girl who's my age, who was my age, and was just an expert in these topics. And she like, I had this idea that I wanted to share, but she explained that it was um, nobody really absorbs an idea without knowing where it came from, or who thought of it, and what's that person's story. And nobody knows who you are unless you open up. And she passed away about a year after we talked, from lung cancer. So it's like her influence on me, or her presence in my life, kind of was magnified because we were the same age, and we were starting companies at the same time, and they were taking off at the same time, and then this happened to her. So like every other TEDx talk that I or just conference that I participated in, her, like, I feel like her influence has been stronger. And yeah, she taught me this whole structure to an effective talk, and it's story, then idea, then the merging of the two, and it really came from that. So I like, yeah, I learned to be vulnerable on stage, and I learned that, like, coming out and being vulnerable makes you more comfortable. It's
Wow.
like the weirdest thing. It's a paradox, but like the more you just open up about your shadow side on stage, the more real the rest of what you have to say becomes. Um, yeah.
That's beautiful. It actually makes me think of this quote. It was on Game of Thrones. I don't know if you watch it, but Tyrion Lannister, he's of course the imp for those who've never seen Game of Thrones, and he's giving someone advice, and he says, when you own your weaknesses, then no one else can use them against you. And so it
Yeah.
becomes like a superpower of sorts, right? When you come out
Yeah.
like, this is who I am, and I'm very comfortable and confident being this person, then everyone
Mhm.
else doesn't have much to say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another quote that you reminded me of from Brené Brown, because I remember that well, one of my earlier talks, I was very disappointed by it because I didn't feel like I said everything I wanted to say, and then I saw the videos, and I didn't look right just physically, and that like killed me. And then I end up on one of her talks, because she always soothes me when it comes to vulnerability, and she said, nobody wants a perfect person up on stage. Nobody wants that. They tune it out because it's not. Nobody wants that. So it's okay to go up there and screw up.
Oh man, I love that. It's true though,
Yeah.
right? Like I think well, I mean, firstly, let's point out the fact that public speaking is one of the biggest fears people have. But
Yeah.
then you take that fear and then you compound it with your own insecurities as a human being and what you go through on a regular basis. And I think the TED Talk that I watched was the one where you were talking about, how you were insecure about your weight because, your family also projected this onto you. And you said something so beautiful. And it said, the root cause of shame is others' opinion about you. And I was like, oh, that's so true. Right? Like, it's like our relation to other people, like how we believe people perceive us is what causes shame within us. And I'd never thought of that. I'd always thought shame stems from within. Well, actually, I never gave it much thought. But if I would have sat down and really thought about it, it would have been, oh, it's coming from something wrong with me, right? So therefore, I have a right to be ashamed of this thing. Whereas it's really, how are other people going to perceive this thing, right? No,
it maybe there's a side of you that knows you are perfect just the way you are. And maybe there's another side of you that doubts it, not because of anything inside you, but because of what other people are saying that you are. And that's how, I feel like I talk, when I write, I talk a lot about like a division in the self. There's ego and essence. And essence is just like your soul, like what the most beautiful side of yourself. And ego is all the things that you, the identities or stories that you develop about yourself in childhood and from your parents and like all this stuff that what you think you are rather than what you really are. And those can like really become separate. But I think a lot of self-improvement is not like changing yourself, but just like cleaning up ego or teaching ego how to be more like essence. So yeah.
That's incredible. To people who don't know, because when you start speaking about something like essence and ego, people are like, what is he talking about? Especially if they're not spiritual people, right? Because I tend to be more on the spiritual side. So I completely get what you're talking about. So it brings me back to your app, Teledipity, right? You use numerology as a way of helping people. And you've pointed out that this is not a predictive tool. We've got free will to change what it is that we want to do. But what got you into numerology? What got you into the spiritual space where you've got this comprehension of ego, essence, and the likes?
Okay. Before I answer, I just realized that I have my fan on and I don't want to screw your audio on your recording. Can I go turn it off? I'll be right back.
No problem.
Okay, much better. So so numerology. I don't know what was first, the chicken or the egg, because what I remember about my childhood is that I was always spiritual, but my parents are not religious. They're both atheists. And I didn't grow up with religion really. I mean, other than celebrating Christmas, but more as like a family thing, not really talking about Jesus or anything. Even I grew up in Mexico, but religion was not a part of my childhood. But I prayed, and I didn't do it in the Judeo-Christian sense, but I would talk to God a lot as a kid. And I don't know if independent of that or because of it, my grandmother, my dad's mom, she was a mystic in every sense. She was into astrology, she was into numerology, she was into like cards, and would have all her like witch friends and seances and all that. And everybody and crystals and everything, and everybody in the family like was aware of it, but nobody participated in it. Like her husband, and my dad and my uncle, they didn't really care for that side of her. But I really took an interest in it from very young. I would ask her about her crystals. I would ask her about her astrology. chart that she had in her wall, and eventually the numerology side too. And I don't know if it was my connection with her that made me interested in those things, or if I was already born interested in, like, obviously, like, just, I don't know, the chicken or the egg, who knows. But that's my first connection to it. And then later in life, right after I graduated from college, it was the Great Recession, so similar to today. There were no jobs. I was fresh out of college and needed something, and I was competing for entry-level jobs with people who had like 10 years experience. And it was a complicated time where I kept going on interviews and second interviews and third interviews, and nobody was hiring me. And I just started getting very anxious about it. And, you know, when you're going through tough times, you're more likely to reach out to these systems because you want the universe to tell you the date where you get that thing you're looking for, or the date where your struggles end. So, like, I was just Googling like my astrology and everything. And like, I probably had not thought about it a lot as a teenager, but now was getting intense in it. And then reconnecting with numerology, it just speaks to me differently. I don't have anything against astrology, and obviously they're very similar. So like, like, I'm not an expert in it, but I feel like numerology is more specific. And I feel like when I read what numerology has to say about me, or this month in my life, or this year in my life, the accuracy is just more eerie and more to the mark. And there's points where it gets scary, but there's nothing more beautiful than that, because it confirms that there's a purpose to what you're going through. There's an order in the universe. And as you said, it's not about predestination. It doesn't tell you what you're going to do with what's thrown at you. It tells you what's going to be thrown at you. So it's like a poker game. Half of it is the cards you get, and half of it is the decisions you make with the cards you get. So numerology tells you about the cards. It doesn't tell you what you're going to do. But I just started getting obsessed with it, and I get obsessed with the things that interest me. So I started like buying books on Amazon, a lot of them used because it was out of style at that time. Right now it's getting back into style, but at the time it wasn't very popular, but it was huge in the 70s. So of numerology books, you see like when the waves of popularity come and go. It was very big around World War I. It was big again in the 70s, and it's coming back now. But in between, there's some people practicing it, and there's books from every decade, and there's a lot of famous numerologists that come in and out of style. But you see where like it reaches more, I don't know if mainstream, but at least mainstream among spiritual people like you and I. And the 70s was a big decade, and I think we're about to enter another one. But yeah, it just speaks to me. It makes perfect sense that that you can see what the universe has in store through numbers, because numbers are everywhere. And if a rose petal is geometrically perfect and the universe is geometrically perfect, then your life and your name are also like mathematically perfect. So yeah.
I love the way you explain it. Like, I could just listen to you go. Because I find it so fascinating personally. I mean, because I think you and I have a similar exposure to it, in the sense that I didn't grow up necessarily with someone fully invested in it, but my mom was always incredibly curious about mysticism and astrology, this and that, and tarot, and, you know, she would just love everything mystical. And so when I grew up, I was very open-minded to it. I think by the time I was like 18, 19, I would like, there was this popular website at the time that was just giving out free charts. And it was very comprehensive, like 30 pages. And every friend I'd meet, I'd be like, give me everything. Your government name. I'm gonna get you sorted. I'm gonna let you understand you. So I love it. But I have to be honest, I think for me with Teledipity, what stood out is it has a different feel because obviously I've had numerology charts done before, but it feels much more personal. It feels much more like it's me. Whereas other charts are very generalized and very broad focused and very big, broad strokes. And I want to know, like, what was the thinking and engineering behind personalizing it to this degree?
I, there was a little bit of planning and a little bit of serendipity to how those profiles came together. So I started the journey to building to there were about 4 years of my life where I knew I wanted to build my own numerology site and make it better and more unique and combine it with technology to kind of take it to the next level, because I feel like the first generation mysticism websites are very are not using technology to its fullest extent. And now the abilities of technology have advanced to a point where you can really get more targeted in a way where you couldn't in the early 2000s, just because programming languages and websites and apps, they weren't where they are today. So I wanted to be like the next generation. And then years went by and I didn't do anything. And then I start connecting with just books about the law of attraction and techniques for manifestation. And I started getting really clear about what I wanted. And it said, I mean, maybe I can find it and read it to you now, but this is like a 5-year-old like mission statement of what Teledipity was going to be. And it said that I wanted to use numerology to build something that was so specific that everybody who read it would know that it was talking about them. And that was, I just had the intention, and then just the ideas started coming. My numerology interpretations are a combination of 3 specific ingredients. One is what the books say and what the systems say. 2 is my own personal experiences. So a lot of what I write about the 3 or the 4 or the 5 when it comes to the personalities is influenced by people I know who are 3s or 4s or 5s who are in my life. And I'll just, every time I was going to write, I'm going to write the 4 in this section of the chart. Who do I know who has that? And I had the whole list of my acquaintances. And I would look for the things that they have in common. And then compare with the book and say like, okay, this is how it really is expressed. And then write it. And like, I mean, a lot of, I'm not going to say where, but like when you get the same number as me, like I'm just describing myself. And then like, you'll know that it's talking about you because we have the same number. So we're experiencing it in the same way. And then with the forecast, it's the same. Like there's a part that's numerology. This is what the number says about when you advance through this vibration. Another part is what I remember was happening to me at the time where I was going through that vibration, and I have a very good memory, and I can compare like the last 2 years I've had. These are the things that were happening, and this is what's in common about them, and this is what is in the book. So like, okay, I can explain it this way that is different, but it's still talking about it. And also like I have this numerology calculator in my phone where I'm tracking people that I know. And when people say like, oh my God, I just got fired, or, oh, I just met somebody, I'll make note of where they are in the 9-year cycle. And that starts influencing when I do forecasting a lot. So it's the books, but it's also what I see and learn just from life experience, knowing what numerology is under it. And then the third is like, I incorporate I'm kind of like a maven of self-improvement books and spiritual books. So I'm constantly reading them. And if I connect with an author writing about a topic that is connected to what numerology says you're supposed to be thinking about right now or whatever, I'll incorporate that too. And you always say like, it's noted. It's like this passage is based on this book by this author, or like I always give credit, but I'm also influenced just by everything that I read, and it comes in. So there's I would say that instead of just being very cold about saying what a number says, I put a lot of soul into it, because it's either my own experience or what a really smart person thinks about the topic, or just what I've seen from other people, either how they are or what happens to them in a certain number. And that's all part of the writing that you get from Teledipity. So I think that's where the uniqueness comes in.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. And as you're describing this, there is a lot of thought that goes into this process and into this, system. And for me, I still find in some ways, right, numerology is so accurate, but people still have a resistance to it. Whereas with Enneagram, right, people are very like, oh yeah, that's my Enneagram, or this,
Yeah.
whatever. But numerology is still like, So do you see us changing? Because I think there is a new spiritual wave taking over. I'm seeing a lot of tarot readers that are like in their 20s and numerology and astrology. So do you think that numerology is going into that mainstream wave?
I think so. And I need to mute my notifications. Sorry. I think so. And I think the aversion, I'm not sure, like, the aversion you're speaking to, because there can be two types of aversion to numerology. One is the skeptics that are skeptic of anything spiritual. Those people I never try to convince. I don't really care what they think. It's like, if you need scientific evidence, just don't engage. It's fine. We're like, you can find what speaks to you outside of the spiritual realms. I don't really, because I'm asked a lot about that. Like, how do you convince the skeptics? And my answer is, like, I don't need the whole world to follow numerology. It's not, I don't think there will ever be a century in human history where everybody believes the same thing, or just using the same, like it's not my mission to bring numerology to the whole planet. It's my mission to bring numerology to the people that feel called by it, or that find something in it. So I don't really worry a lot about convincing anybody. But if it's somebody that's already spiritual, like they're all into astrology, all into Enneagram and all that stuff, and they don't either feel like numerology is useful, it's probably because they've either never read it, or they read it from somebody that's not the best writer or the best person at explaining it. Because if you get a chart from another numerology site, more likely you're getting something from Hans de Coes, who's very famous, and he built a software that he sells licenses on. So a lot of like astrology sites that sell numerology reports are just selling his reports, because he made a very good report, and he just sells licenses to any third parties. Or they're just like people that write in very general terms. So I think if you wanted to check out numerology, create your Teledipity report, and you'll get into it. And if Teledipity doesn't speak to you, then you'll probably never be into numerology.
People do not subscribe to Teledipity and love it and say this numerology app is completely accurate to me, then they're never going to get into astrology. Numerology.
Exactly.
Thing. No, but I want to know.
Exactly.
Do you ever feel tempted to use it in a predictive way, like using numerology as a predictive tool? When am I going to meet the love of my life?
Well, absolutely. Definitely. And that's, I kind of do use it as a predictive tool, because I send the monthly forecasts and weekly forecasts for people who are premium members. And there is the predictive side to it. And I think here's the way I'll explain it. Because people ask me like, oh, like, you must be super cool because you always know what's going to happen to you. Like, you always know what this year's going to be. And my answer is yes and no, because I can, like, when the year started for me, I knew it was going to be a tough year. I knew it was going to be a slow year. And I knew that my objectives were going to kind of like be on pause. And I had a really good inertia going last year, but I entered into an 11 year, and I knew that unexpected things would happen that would slow me down, and that I was okay with it. I was not imagining a pandemic. I was not imagining getting like infected because I had coronavirus for 2 months. So like I didn't know what it was, but I knew what kind of year I was going to have. And this happens to users of the site a lot, and they'll tell me the same thing. Like, you read your forecast on the first of the month, and you have very clear visions of what's going to happen based on what I'm saying, like how that will be represented in your life. And then at the end of the month, you read it again and you see it was extremely accurate, just not what you imagined. It was something completely different. But if you read it again, you're like, yeah, no, that was right. But it's just not what you pictured when you first read it. So like the element of surprise is still there. Like, you still don't know what's going to happen. It's kind of like a weather report. It's different from like I can tell you it's going to rain, but I can't tell you like it's going to rain and you're going to wake up late and you're going to decide to go get a cup of coffee, and then when you're in the coffee house you're going to get this idea about your, like, those things just are more like are either unpredictable or also depend on what you do. So it's accurate, but life always surprises you still. So
the manifestation of it isn't what you think it's going to be, but it's accurate.
Almost never. Like, I mean, I've known my own numerology report for a decade, and I've never been accurate about what I predict for myself. It's still aligned with numerology, but it's always something else, something different from what I'm thinking. Yeah.
So what stops you from, like, let's say you're going on a first date with someone and you think, oh, I really like this person and and you're like, let me go see our compatibility report. And let's say the compatibility report is like, do you make a decision based on that? Or is there, like, what do you look at when you're looking at that?
So you're right when you say that if I go on a date, I'll immediately, like, I'll try to get their name and their full name and birth date as quickly as I can to see their numbers.
Let's just pause quickly. So how exactly do you bring this about? Are you like, no, so do you have a second name, a third name, a fourth name?
Like, it either comes organically in the conversation, or a good trick that I usually do, which I don't think would work for astrologists, but it works for me, is like, oh, let me see your ID on your driver's license. Your picture on your driver's license, because then I see it, and then the full name and birth date's right there.
The sneakiness of it all, I love it.
Yeah, but so, like, yeah, I'll look at the numbers, and I don't stop seeing anybody based on their numbers. And I'm very compatibility when it comes to numerology or astrology is super fun, and I use it a lot. And I'm building this new side of the software, which we're releasing slowly, which is being able to pull those for, like, coworker relationships and friend relationships and love relationships. And I think it's a really fun part of numerology, but I'm always wary of it, because the way people use it is not how you should use it. When people say, like, I can't date X because they're a Virgo, I always cringe, because I don't know astrology, but I know that's not how it works. Because, like, there's serial killers out there, and they'll have numerology profiles too. And I bet you there's a serial killer out in the world with a perfectly compatible report to you. So it can't just be about numerology. There has to be something else. And, like, when you see a number in a numerology chart, a number is a vibration, but vibrations can be expressed in negative ways and in positive ways, and you don't know where in the spectrum that person is. There's very negative aspects of the 5 and very positive aspects of the 5. And if you get a -5, that's a really difficult person to have a relationship with. If you get a +5, that's an awesome person to have a relationship with. So the compatibility will tell me how 3s and 5s get along, but I'm not sure if you're with a -5 or a +5. And again, serial killers have numbers. So, like, you can't just go by the compatibility report. There's also, you have to get to know the person. So a compatibility report can tell you, here's where you're likely to have friction because you see the world in different ways based on this. Here's where you're likely to have friction because you have different priorities based on this. This is the area where you're going to have to work the most in your relationship. But a report will never tell you this relationship is worth your time, or this relationship isn't worth your time. And I really, even though I'm building out this side of the product, I really hate when people say, I'm not going to date this person because of what the compatibility report says. Because that's not really how numerology or astrology should be used at all.
I love that. I love the clarity of it, because I think that is how people classify, right? Like, I don't date Scorpios, they're too intense. And you're like, come on, dude. Like,
Exactly.
Scorpios, there's terrible Scorpios. Like, it just, I mean, it's the spectrum of humanity, right? You're going to get, like you said, a great one who's like, yeah, amazing, and they exhibit the most positive qualities. And then you'll get a Trump who's a number, I'm not sure what it is, but then you'll be like, ugh, he's probably not the best manifestation of this particular number. And so for you, as you've been going through this journey of, you know, growing and learning about numerology, like, what excites you the most about this? Like, what excites you about growing this platform?
I think numerology is a really cool tool, but I'm more interested in the effect of the tool than the tool itself. And the effect of the tool for me, or what my mission is with the Teledipity platform, is that it inserts spirituality into your daily life. That whenever you get an email, whenever you get a notification, or whenever you go in because you're trying to find some answer, it's a reflection inducer. It helps you look at your life from a different perspective, from more like the spiritual perspective. So I feel like we lost this, and humans are more used to living this way, where in ancient times, spiritual thinking was an organic part of daily life. It was always inserted. Religion was not just going to church. It was art. It was music. It was like daily readings or whatever else. It was just in like sprinkled throughout your day. And in modern times, two things have been happening. Now, I'm not against any religion, but I feel like religions today have gotten very narrow in their kind of like expression of spiritual life. And maybe there's denominations in each religion that are better at it than others. And then maybe there's but regardless of that, what you're seeing is a trend where there's a lot of people, millennial generation and onwards, that are not engaging with religion as much. And the problem is that whether or not you want religion in your life, spirituality has to be in your life, because spirituality is an essential ingredient of the well-rounded human. And spirituality doesn't necessarily require mystical or magical thinking, but it's any time that you think about your life from the larger perspective. What's my mission here? What am I supposed to do? Just any existential question is spiritual thinking. How does the universe work? How does how do I live a better life? These are spiritual questions, and I don't feel like modern day is very conducive to remember to have them all the time. And it's not about giving anybody the answer, but it's about encouraging them to hey, why don't you think about the larger perspective instead of just your next job? Why don't you think about the larger perspective instead of just oh, I want to meet somebody and get a relationship? Who are you? What do you want to do with this life story that you get? And I want a technology tool that constantly reminds you to think that way throughout the day. And I think in my case, numerology is how I accomplish that, because it's very conducive to it's a 4-day, it's a 5-day, it's a 3-month, and just inspiring those questions in that way. So I like the vision for my platform is that it's just a reflection inducer, and connecting you with spiritual questions in at times where you wouldn't normally have them.
Oh, that's so important. And I like what you covered with, in terms of religion. I think you can be religious without being spiritual.
Yep.
I don't feel like it's a holistic life. I think you can follow a
No.
teaching without it enriching your soul. And I think
Mm-hmm.
spirituality is what allows it to enrich your soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
Believing in that concept of each other. Like in South Africa, we've got a word called Ubuntu, which is I
Mm-hmm.
am because you are. So it really does force you to think of the other person. What is my reason for being here? Surely it's not just to get married. Surely it's not
Yeah.
just, get this job. Surely, and really asking yourself the big questions. And I love that. I love that that's the mission for you. And as far as spirituality goes, you were speaking about really asking these questions. Do you have like practices that you engage in? Do you have something like meditation rituals? Like, what do you do to maintain your spirituality?
In terms of like daily practices, I meditate twice a day, in the morning and before going to bed. They are kind of they're not like quiet your mind meditations. They're more like visualizing, or like just healing the energy, like chakras in your body. So there's an objective to them, and there's a process that I go through. I do a lot of. I used to use vision boards. Now I have mind movies where like you just visualize like where you're trying to get to, and like just cut in different images or movies of what your objectives are, so like you see them and get excited about them. And every day I go on a walk listening to a book. I'm a little bit ADD, so reading physical books is harder for me than just listening. If I listen to a book, I'll absorb all the information, even if it's like an 8-hour listening a session. So I walk and listen to books, and those are kind of like the daily practices. Outside of that, it depends on what's going on, but if there's something complicated happening in my life, I do pray. And it's not like I'm not kneeling down or putting my palms together, but I do try to have like a direct conversation with source or energy or whatever you want to call it. That's about it. Oh, and I have a bunch of crystals on my desk, but I'm not an expert in how they work. I just do my own little thing with them. But that's it.
Oh, I love that, because I have crystals too. I love crystals. And okay, so you just spoke us through your spiritual practice, and sometimes people tend to think when you're a spiritual being, all of a sudden you can bypass certain emotions, and you can bypass certain experiences. Like, oh, you're spiritual, you shouldn't need to have a relationship, or you shouldn't have a craving or yearning for a relationship, or money, or this or that. And do you find that you encounter people like that who are like, Andrew, why do you want a relationship, man? You're like so spiritual. What do you say?
Especially my family,
Oh,
because they'll be like, I mean, I'm all like, here's the thing: when you're a content creator talking about spiritual or self-improvement topics, like at no point am I pretending that I'm perfect or that I've mastered all I'm just explaining them really well. I'm not perfect. I'm still a human being, and I can get angry. I can get frustrated. I can be sad. I'm a human being. But like it happens a lot with family where you're like, oh, like what happened to your Pythagoras stuff? Like you should be more calm right now. And I'm like, no. Like I'm a writer, but I'm not a perfect person teaching other people to be perfect, and I never pretend to be. And I mean, you saw that in my speeches. Like I'm not I don't think anybody should approach any content creation in self-improvement pretending that they've figured it out, because you never know if you've figured it out. And anytime you think you've figured it out, that's likely when you're repressing something and not seeing something that's like driving you. So I think healing is possible, and I think it's possible to ascend to higher levels, but I don't think it's possible to evaluate yourself in terms of like, have I reached like a higher state or not. You never know. And I don't think you also shouldn't see it as a journey that has an endpoint where like I reached this mountaintop of enlightenment and then I don't have to worry about it anymore. That's not real. Like that's not, I mean, if you reach that level of enlightenment, you probably wouldn't be in this dimension. And if you're in this dimension, you're as imperfect as everybody else. Or that's how I see it. In terms of spiritual bypassing, I feel like I've seen it a lot this year. I follow a lot of influencers in this space, and I listen to a lot of podcasts in this space, and we are all going through not unprecedented, but very unique time in history. Like what we're living hadn't happened in a century. So it's a pretty unique time. And there's a person that professes to be spiritual can move through crises in two different ways. The first is to say, I'm fine. I'm always fine. I always tap into my peace. I'm always happy. This is not really affecting me. I'm teaching others how to deal with this because I'm really at peace. I've learned how to deal with these situations, and I'm just trying to give these happiness to others. Or, yeah, I'm pretty scared. I don't know what's going to happen. I cried the other day. I'm feeling better today. I'm trying not to get this virus. I don't know how to control. Are you going to pretend to be superhuman? Or are you just going to be honest and vulnerable about what you're really feeling? And the first is what you call spiritual bypassing. And there's a lot of spiritual people doing that right now. And I hear a lot of people saying stuff like, and I mean, I don't want to get into the debate about the virus, but you're in South Africa, I'm in Mexico. We've seen a little bit of the worst of it. And there's people saying, like, if you don't think about it, you won't catch it. Because law of attraction, no, that's not how it works. And I'm not saying that we need to live in fear, but you have to look at what's in front of you. If you have financial difficulties, you don't say like, no, I don't have a problem. No, it's fine. Like, I'm not going to look at my bank account. Like, no, you confront your problem and then you figure out the solution. So I think there's people mistake denial for positivity and optimism. And people mistake an honest expression of emotion, whether it's fear or sadness or anger, for weakness. And I don't believe in either. I think the bravest people are the ones that say, like, I'm pissed off right now. And it's okay.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I couldn't agree more, because I think even my work, I do work in forgiveness. And I always have to tell people, I'm like, look, I'm teaching you a skill that I've learned and I continue to practice. And life keeps throwing me situations where I'm like, oh, I need to forgive. Ooh, okay. And sometimes it takes me a second, and sometimes there's this joke I always tell about, I was breaking up with someone. And so he says to me, and he pauses, and he looks like he's in complete shock. And he looks at me very sincerely, and I'm like, oh, he's going to be so sad without me. Oh, the devastation. And then he looks at me and goes, are you kidding me? And I'm like, whoa, he's really devastated. And then he goes, you can forgive a mass murderer, but you can't forgive me. And I was like, wow, okay, low blow. And I'm just like, and I couldn't help but laugh in that moment, because I'm like, it's so true. In that moment, forgiveness didn't even factor into the equation. I was just like, I need you out of my life.
Yeah. And I mean, the fallacy in that line of thinking is that you can forgive him and not date him. Like, you don't have to date him to forgive him. You could just say, out of my life, and then forgive him later. So it doesn't negate the forgiveness. Right?
Which happened, exactly what happened. But I think it is true. I think it is so important to point out that emotions are exactly that. They're your body's alarm system. They're pointing you towards something that either needs addressing, needs healing, or just needs acknowledgement. Because sometimes, like what I've discovered is, I'll be going through an emotion, and as soon as I tell someone, like, I'm feeling anxious, or I name it, whatever it is, I'm feeling like really irritable, I'm feeling this, it starts to lose its power. It's when I suppress it and I'm like, I'm not angry, that I tend to get angrier and angrier and
that
angrier.
You magnify it.
And isn't it that saying, what you resist persists? right? And it's so
Mm-hmm.
true with the mind, with your emotions. And I find what you're saying to be so true about how the spiritual community does end up being in these two facets, either denialism, which is like, if
Mm-hmm.
you are experiencing anything in your life, you brought it upon yourself, and it's like you attracted it, and you thought about it, and so on and so forth. Or there's the other part where it's like, be balanced. This human journey is here to teach you lessons, and it's through the pain most of the time that we learn our lessons. Because I don't know about you, Andrew, but when I'm happy and I'm content, I'm not like, oh, let me go seek spiritual enlightenment. Like, I'm like, no. you know? And it's kind of what you said about
Yeah.
how you started your app, right? Like it came from this place of like, I need answers. you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. It's kind of like, it's what brings you back when you've strayed. It's not what you, yeah.
oh man. And it's interesting because you spoke a little bit about your family. And so I want to know, how does your family take it? How does your family, because your parents aren't religious or spiritual. So how does the rest of your
Mm-hmm.
family accept what you do and your path that you've taken?
Um, I feel like my parents don't don't engage in it as like active users because it's not aligned with their view of the world, but they're still very supportive of me. They still celebrate my accomplishments. So like they still ask me how the business is going. So I do have a lot of close friends and my little sister who are people who weren't spiritual before, and then because of Teledipity, they've opened up to that line of thinking. And I do hear these stories a lot, and they're my favorite. When somebody says, "I didn't do astrology, I didn't do horoscopes, but this, I like this, and I don't know why, but I like this." Then I'm able to like bring people who wouldn't have used any other site like mine, but there's something about mine that invites them in. I've seen it in my family, and I've heard, people have emailed me about it, and that's where I feel the most like grateful for being able to do this, because like just bringing somebody into just not like I don't pretend that numerology like will fix your life or will change your life, but just the fun of engaging with it and like being able to inject that fun into others. That's why I do what I do. So
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I think it also gives you comfort because it's
yeah.
like, someone gets me.
Absolutely. And
Someone
yeah, like
empathy.
yeah, and it's a very important thing, because I can't even begin to explain all the times before and after launching my company of saying what I want to do or I'm doing, and people rolling their eyes or just like really feeling the energy of disdain. Be like, really, that this is what you do? Like just meeting somebody at a networking event and so like, yeah, I have a numerology app. It's like horoscopes, but it's different. And people are like, oh, like, I mean, I there's a lot of rejection that comes with what I do. If I said that I was building some productivity app, everybody would be like, oh, like that's awesome. But with numerology, I see and receive a lot of disdain from people that don't get it or think that this is pseudoscience or whatever. And um, the celebration of people who do get it is super important, because like, I mean, you can know what you're passionate about and why you're doing what you're doing, but it's very different where you're the only one hearing the music than after you cross that to the other side of the bridge uh, where you're able to just build a tribe and connect with other people like you. So to anybody who feels like they're crazy with their crazy dreams, and like sensing or feeling a lot of rejection, get through that part, because the other side is pretty awesome.
Oof. That is such a great note. That is just such a great
Yeah.
note to, start closing it off on, because I think any person who goes off on a path that's unique to them,
Mhm.
and that you haven't seen mirrored or played before, it's very
Mhm.
challenging. You do fall
Yeah,
down quite a bit, and you do get quite a bit of rejection. And also, a lot of
Mhm.
people around you, as much as they love you, they don't understand.
Exactly.
They're like, then do something else, Andrew. If people don't like
Yeah,
your morality, just do something. And you're like, I
yeah.
don't want to.
Yeah,
Oh
100%.
gosh. So closing this off, Andrew, I want to know, what is your life path?
My life path, I'm a 5 with 3s, 7s, and 1s. So my life, like when you talk about the 5 in terms of the life path, it's about freedom, and the concept of freedom in all areas of the life. Freedom from um, emotional freedom, spiritual freedom, financial freedom, like just every plane of existence. And people who go through the 5 life path have to adapt to change, because change comes very quickly and often unexpectedly under the 5 vibration. Never really feel attached to anything, because things come and go. Like when you're under a 5, like, and this applies to you if you're in a 5-year or in a 5-month, you just have to like go with the stream of life, because under the 5 you experience 3 or 4 more changes than the average person. So it's always like a little bit of unstable, and uncertainty is always there. And it's about adapting to change, and understanding the true meaning of freedom in all its different aspects. So that's how I would describe it.
Oh, wow. And okay,
Are
so
you a 9?
I think I'm a 1.
Oh, okay, later. Yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
1. I don't quite understand the full book of a numerology yet, So
Uh-huh.
it's a 1, and then it's got a 2 here and a 4 here. So I don't understand the depth of it, but I know
Mhm.
I'm a 1. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
I'm getting a lot of 9 energy from you, because I
Let's
can
go with
detect it now
Brenda.
without looking at a chart. And so there has to be 9s, but it like when you said it was leadership and humanitarian causes, the humanitarian is coming from the 9 and the leadership is coming from the 1. So I feel like there's a bunch of 9s in your chart too.
That's insane. I love the
Yeah.
fact that you can do that. Like already for me, like you've got me geeking out, because I'm like, oh my God, you can walk in and tell what people are. Let's go to the party, Andrew. Like you would be my party friend all the time. I'd be like, you go. I'd even put you on a date. I'd just be like, I need you to sit at that table and just watch his energy. Watch his energy. That's all I ask. Andrew, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for just spending time with me. I've loved this.
My pleasure. It's been awesome to meet you. I hope we can chat more in a non podcast recording setting, so we can just talk more.
And
Because yeah, I love talking. I love getting to know you. I loved reading about you when we were introduced by Candice. So like, I want to hear more about what you're doing. And yeah, and I have to tell you, this year I have no idea why, but I've had dreams about Cape Town, and I've never been. But there was the one night in May where like I was in the city, and like I like this mountains and the sea and everything, and I was like, I didn't know where I was, but I woke up and I was like, I think that's South Africa, and I Google it, and the pictures are identical, and I didn't I didn't like, so there's something, I don't know what, but there's something about South Africa that's coming through psychically to me this year. I don't know.
come to South Africa. That's what it's
I
telling
would love to. Yeah, I would love to.
me. Well, you've got a friend here, so that's perfect.
Awesome. Are you in Cape Town or Johannesburg?
I'm in Johannesburg. But
Cool.
Cape Town's like around the corner. We can take a flight. And I told you,
Awesome.
I'm taking you everywhere, Andrew. I'm taking you everywhere.
I would love to. It has to be my next trip. It just has
Oh,
to be.
please, please make it your next trip. And where are you?
Absolutely.
Mexico, right? Are you Mexico right now?
Yeah. 2 hours north of Mexico City.
Oh, amazing, amazing.
Like narcissism, because it feels like one of the bigger things I'm seeing right now is that I think And listen, I believe in the law of attraction. I believe in manifestation. I know it's an accurate description of what's going on, but there's such a focus on it, it seems, especially on social media with a lot of spiritual influencers, where it feels like spirituality is becoming a lot about what I can get for myself or what I can manifest for myself. And there's not a lot of talk of the collective. And this year is really putting like a magnifying glass on the fact that we're facing this crisis, and people are putting their own needs sometimes before the collective. And I feel like, I mean, spirituality is a little bit about the individual, but it's also about the community. And sometimes, not always, not forever, but sometimes you do have to sacrifice your own needs for the good of others. And that seems to be something that is getting missed because there's a lot of individualism that has been a part of our culture for so long, where we advance through a situation like this, and it's just not something that comes easy to people, saying like, you know what, it's going to be an uncomfortable year, and it's okay. It's not forever. It can be 9 months, it can be 12 months, it can be 18 months, but it's not forever. And if you're not able to do everything you want to do, and if you're not able to have the life you want to have for 18 months, it's not that big a deal when it means that you're taking care of others. And it's okay. And I don't see, like, I see more as the live your best life spirituality, and not the let's take care of each other spirituality. And
oh man, you just covered something that's so important, and I'm so glad you said that in this episode, because I think it is important for people to start getting into that mentality that says, yes, I want to be great, I want all these amazing things, but I can't have this if the rest of the world is crumbling. So
yeah.
you advancing and living your best life at the expense of the rest of the collective, or at the fact that you don't want to wear a mask, for goodness sake, or you don't want to do something that's so small that you're like, okay, if you don't believe it works, then just do it anyway. It's not going to kill you. People are much more oh, poor me, and I think 2020 and COVID for me, with all the devastation, and I don't want to minimize it, I think it has been such an important year collectively in humanity to really say the system we've been living under is not working. It's not functioning optimally. It is at the detriment of most of us. And if we don't change our line of thinking, if we don't change our vibrational frequency, if we don't start speaking about these spiritual practices, for goodness sake, respecting each other, I genuinely don't know how we're going to continue to move forward, right? Because without love, without hope, I don't see a better world.
No, I don't think the 21st century would have ended well if there was no coronavirus, and if we had just gone on the way we were. I mean, just from the environmental perspective, we would have been over. But there also economically and politically, and there was a lot that needed to change, and we just didn't have the wherewithal to change it, and we probably still don't. But it's the beginning of a process of change, and I have faith in humanity because we've always figured it out at some point. So I'm hopeful that we will, and I agree. I'm not disconnected from the devastation. I got the virus and I was very sick, so I understand the suffering that comes with this process of change. But there's no question that it's a blessing in disguise.
Oh man.
Like narcissism, because it feels like one of the bigger things I'm seeing right now is that I think, and listen, I believe in the law of attraction. I believe in manifestation. I know it's an accurate description of what's going on, but there's such a focus on it, it seems, especially on social media with a lot of spiritual influencers, where it feels like spirituality is becoming a lot about what I can get for myself or what I can manifest for myself. And there's not a lot of talk of the collective. And this year is really putting a magnifying glass on the fact that we're facing this crisis, and people are putting their own needs sometimes before the collective. And I feel like, I mean, spirituality is a little bit about the individual, but it's also about the community. And sometimes, not always, not forever, but sometimes you do have to sacrifice your own needs for the good of others. And that seems to be something that is getting missed, because there's a lot of individualism that has been a part of our culture for so long, where we advance through a situation like this, and it's just not something that comes easy to people, saying like, you know what, it's going to be an uncomfortable year, and it's okay. It's not forever. It can be 9 months, it can be 12 months, it can be 18 months, but it's not forever. And if you're not able to do everything you want to do, and if you're not able to have the life you want to have for 18 months, it's not that big a deal when it means that you're taking care of others. And it's okay. And I don't see, like, I see more as the live your best life spirituality, and not the let's take care of each other spirituality. And
oh man, you just covered something that's so important, and I'm so glad you said that in this episode, because I think it is important for people to start getting into that mentality that says, yes, I want to be great, I want all these amazing things, but I can't have this if the rest of the world is crumbling, so
yeah.
you advancing and living your best life at the expense of the rest of the collective, or at the fact that you don't want to wear a mask, for goodness sake, or you don't want to do something that's so small that you're like, okay, if you don't believe it works, then just do it anyway. It's not going to kill you. People are much more, oh, poor me, and I think 2020 and COVID for me, with all the devastation, and I don't want to minimize it, I think it has been such an important year collectively in humanity to really say the system we've been living under is not working. It's not functioning optimally. It is at the detriment of most of us. And if we don't change our line of thinking, if we don't change our vibrational frequency, if we don't start speaking about these spiritual practices, for goodness sake, respecting each other, I genuinely don't know how we're going to continue to move forward, right? Because without love, without hope, I don't see a better world.
No, I don't think the 21st century would have ended well if there was no coronavirus, and if we had just gone on the way we were. I mean, just from the environmental perspective, we would have been over. But there also economically and politically, and there was a lot that needed to change, and we just didn't have the wherewithal to change it, and we probably still don't. But it's the beginning of a process of change, and I have faith in humanity, because we've always figured it out at some point. So I'm hopeful that we will, and I agree. I'm not disconnected from the devastation. I got the virus and I was very sick, so I understand the suffering that comes with this process of change, but there's no question that it's a blessing in disguise.
Oh man. Okay, Andrew, clearly we can keep speaking forever.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end it here, but thank you so much. That was such a cool interview with Andrew. We discussed so much that I didn't think we would, but that's the beauty of conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you don't believe in numerology, download Teledipity and let me know how it goes. As usual, guys, please do like, share, subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon.